HR professionals are many times viewed as the caretakers of the organization, but yet who takes care of HR? Welcome to the Joy Powered Workspace podcast, where we help HR and business leaders embrace joy in the workplace. I'm JoDee Curtis, owner of Purple Ink, an HR consulting and talent development firm. And with me is my friend and co host, Susan White, owner of Susan Tender White Consulting, an HR consulting practice. And Susan is also an executive collaborator with Purple Ink. Our topic today is burnout in HR, understanding it, preventing it, and overcoming it. Susan, we've had lots of requests in the past, and we've talked about just burnout for employees in general. But we actually had many listeners who had requested this topic on specifically burnout in HR. And I thought it was interesting that really this issue touches almost every HR professional at some point in their career.
Hmm.
And it's an important topic for all employees, but consider that HR professionals are many times viewed as the caretakers of the organization, but yet who takes care of HR? So,
Right.
we'll start by grounding ourselves a little bit in what burnout actually is. And the World Health Organization classifies burnout as an occupational phenomenon resulting from chronic workplace stress not successfully managed, with three different dimensions: exhaustion, cynicism, and reduced professional efficacy.
Wow. Translation for HR: you're drained, you feel detached or negative about your work, and you doubt your impact. Not good. I'm thinking about in my own career, I don't know, JoDee, if you ever felt like you hit burnout. I think as I was going through burnout a number of times, I never knew that's what it was. I knew there was periods of terrible stress, and I know that I was just like operating on fumes.
Yeah.
And I didn't think to myself, maybe I'm burned out. Maybe I need to do something different. Instead, I was like, I got to get through this. I mean, this is, but as we look at that definition, I became more cynical during those times. I'm sure I was exhausted and I could not have been operating at my A level. I just couldn't have been. So I look back at those periods and I kind of wish I had a label for it, or I wish I had thought maybe there's something I ought to do about it.
Right, right. I feel exactly the same. So, and some of those specific root causes we see again and again for that is the first one, always on crisis management,
Mhm.
right? If you think of what HR is dealing with these days: layoffs, restructures, investigations, compliance deadlines, right? HR absorbs the anxiety of the organization almost in any of those situations. And in SHRM's 2025 findings, the top drivers for that include heavy workloads, compensation pressures, and poor leadership.
Yeah. I can remember years where when I worked in this large organization that there were no raises, or no raises for the client groups that I supported, or no raises for those of us in HR at a certain level and different things. And yet the pressure kept coming on, the demands kept coming on. And all those things are stressors that are going to hurt. And there's always a crisis. There was no shortage of crises, right?
Right, right.
S- So let me give you a second one. That comes up a lot that causes a burnout. When you're understaffed, you're over capacity, when you're really asked to do things that you feel are unreasonable. SHRM's State of the Workplace analysis summarized by HRDive.com showed that 62% of HR pros feel like they work beyond capacity, and
Mm,
57% say their departments have at some point or other been understaffed.
yeah, yeah, that's tough. I think too, HR deals with a lot of emotional labor and
Hmm.
confidential issues, right? So they carry the employees' tough stories. The employees are coming to them with their burdens and hardships, which is, a part of the role at times, but
Mhm.
as different than other employees' role, HR can't always vet those details or talk to other people about it due to confidentiality, and it can create a sense of isolation
Mm.
around it that they've taken on all these heavy stories. So,
I think that is so real. To this day, there's situations or stories that I was involved in that still haunt me, right? That still
oh,
lay, right? I mean, just really tough issues. I think when people go into HR, they're thinking, I'm going to have a happy job. I'm going to do the people side of business. Oh my gosh, you get the whole business of people, and it is not always pretty. Yeah, for sure.
right, right.
So the fourth potential root cause, which we see happening that can spur burnout, is role sprawl and legal risk. An HR role might include, being a recruiter, a coach, a mediator, benefits analyst, compliance officer, and if you make mistakes in some of those areas, it can carry real legal implications. You very well may be drawn into litigation from a past employee or current employee or an applicant who wanted to be an employee but didn't get in, right? No
Right.
one. Yeah, no wonder your nervous system always stays on. You're always thinking about the potential risk or downside of an action that either you take or one of your employees takes.
Yeah.
So, zooming out, global stress is high. Let's think big picture here. Gallup's 2024 State of the Global Workplace found 41% of employees report a lot of daily stress, with poor management amplifying the problem. HR lives at the intersection of that management reality. So when your employees feel like they're stressed and managers aren't doing a good job at seeing it and addressing it, and you're in the middle, employees are coming to you, managers are coming to you, you've got that. All of a sudden, you've got more than your own stress, you've got the organization stress.
Yeah, I do. I think that word intersection really hits home with me and thinking about the times where that exact scenario was happening. The
Mm.
employees were coming to me about the manager was coming to me about the employees. And, I saw things from both sides, right?
Yeah.
And it's very tricky, very
Hmm.
tricky. So, yeah. And one kind of guardrail we can think about too is that psychological safety. The American Psychology Association's 2024 work in America reports links to psychological safety with better performance and fewer negative outcomes, which includes emotional exhaustion. And if your organization lacks psychological safety, it's likely that the HR team gets squeezed the hardest, right?
Hmm.
Because what puts them in that intersection again. So what are some things that HR professionals can do to prevent your own burnout? Well, the evidence says burnout is largely about the system and not individual willpower. And I found this interesting, right? Because I think whether you're HR or not, a lot of times we seem to take the blame on things ourselves, right? And think, what am I doing? What did I say? But in an article from Harvard Business Review titled Burnout is about your workplace, not your people, they cite a 2019 Gallup survey, which found the top 5 reasons for burnout are unfair treatment at work, unmanageable workload, a lack of role clarity, a lack of communication and support from their manager, and unreasonable timelines. Now, that survey was about all employees, not
Hmm.
just HR professionals. But again, HR are experiencing those, as you just mentioned earlier as well. And then all the employees who are experiencing them might be coming to HR as well. So many times we're trying to treat the individual and not the organization. So here are some ideas to change the system of the process, right? So one is to set boundaries and rethink your calendar. Consider scheduling meetings in shorter time frames. I think a lot of us learned this during COVID, right? That we used, at least I used to default to those 60-minute meetings. But now I set expectations for shorter time frames. I send a lot more meeting invites for 30 minutes or 45 minutes or even
Mhm.
sometimes 20 minutes, right? Schedule time to not be interrupted while you work on something like an investigation or a compliance issue, which really needs more or may need more focus time to work on them. And then schedule open door hours for drop ins and ask others to schedule time on your calendar to avoid that walk by crisis. Now, I know for some people that, those can be tough adjustments. We may think of ourselves as HR, we need to be open to the people or we need to be available, but that's what's causing a lot of burnout there too.
I
So,
think that's very fair. I love that term, walk by crises. Yeah, they happen to see you and all of a sudden they dump a crisis on you. What?
right,
Right,
right.
I guess you gotta stop walking down that hallway. Um,
Yeah,
I think the other thing I would just say about the boundaries is that I think that HR folks, if you're listening, and business leaders, if you're listening, it's okay to say no. Give yourself the permission. Just because it comes to you doesn't mean that is your problem. Uh, don't don't be the receiving end of everyone else's problem. There's going to be times where you need to let redirect to somebody else or back to the individual. Yeah,
yeah,
you don't need to be everyone's um, dumping ground for their issues that they may have created. So
right.
good. Here's a second idea. Implement more self-service to allow employees to do more for themselves. This was, really popular in the early 2000s, trying to do managers do more self-service than employees do more self-service. I think we've gotten away from that, and I think it's important to go back and take a look at is HR still doing or providing that we need to have managers and employees do more of. Automating things using systems or software where employees can change their address, select their benefits during open enrollment, any type of life changes that happen. What can our brokers, our benefit providers, payroll services, what can they help us automate so that there can be self-service accessibility? FMLA, PTO time requests, consider any other actions that are administrative in nature. How can we try to use automation to streamline and get us out of the um, explaining, handling, and doing stages? Approvals can be built into a lot of those things. We don't need to be a stop on the way for compensation. Let's just putting through salary recommendations. Maybe at some point we can pull reports, take a look, figure out if there's any issues, but we don't need to be a step in a process that I see happen a lot in organizations that were first level, second level, third level approvers.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
where can we streamline?
Right. And somewhat similar to that, or along those lines of streamlining, thinking about utilizing FAQs or videos or checklists and tips, put them in your intranet or central, easy to find locations that employees can go to on their own to get help on policies or to reduce repeat questions, right? Maybe it's something in a newsletter if people still have them or, somewhere to cut down on the number of questions, which can be better for the people too, right? That they can get this immediately and maybe not have to wait to talk to someone in HR.
You're
Yeah.
exactly right. And you know what? Sometimes when you do your FAQs or have kind of a data base where people can go to get answers, that you sometimes have to get those employees who love calling you or coming by to see you. You're going to sit down with them and show them where the answers are. Maybe you do that a couple of times because it's just easier to ask JoDee, no, look, Dan, we're going to sit down together and we're going to navigate to the place where that answer is. Yeah, that's
Right.
great. Number
Right.
4, when you think about ideas, our fourth one is psychological safety and really manager enablement. You know,
Mm,
no- for example, set up weekly reminders to ask yourself, what is blocking me? What did I learn this week? What am I working on that I don't need to be working on? What is the big projects I need to do that I should be working on? Maybe you
mm.
just have a kind of a weekly huddle with yourself to kind of reprioritize things. Secondly, give yourself grace. Respect your time off, set your boundaries, and then hold those boundaries, right? If you feel real burnout and you see yourself just not performing at the level you want to, maybe you contact your EAP. Maybe there's a counselor or somebody you want to talk to help get you back and rebalanced, right? And then modeling psychological safety in public and in private forums. It's okay to say you don't know. Let's find out. Normalize asking for help. Don't feel like you have to keep saying yes, 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 putting everything on your shoulders, being the Iron Man who's going to go solve the problem. Let others see you be vulnerable. It's going to help them be vulnerable.
Yeah. Number 5 is capacity and prioritization. So, sharing with leaders and business partners what is on your plate? What are your goals? What are your priorities? And what is your bandwidth? So, you want your goals and priorities to align with theirs as well too, but sometimes we have particular things we're trying to accomplish as well too, and just having conversations about those so they're not thinking, you're not doing anything for me lately. What are you working on? So that they know, right? And cross training your HR team to allow for additional help in certain areas when needed. Maybe at particularly hectic times of the year during, if you have a performance evaluation time period or open enrollment, to think about having temporary staffing or outside HR consultants or fractional HR to get help when it's going to be particularly busy. And leaders often say yes to those things when the trade offs are quantified, right? So if you can say, this is how many hours I need help. And I know we don't always know those, right? But maybe we get them one year and we calculate the hours and we know what they are, so we know what to ask for the next year. So
Mm, good thinking. And the sixth and final idea is plan recovery time. Think about, could you have 45-minute meetings? So you have 15 minutes between your meetings to use that restroom, to grab a refresh on your water, to stretch, to just clear your mind, check in with someone. I know that the days that I just have meeting after meeting after meeting and I'm not refreshing, I'm not bringing my A game and I'm more likely to be not necessarily burned out, but on the road to being burned out. So think
right.
about, well, how do I carve out some time so that I can breathe between encounters? Schedule lunch sometimes outside with friends or colleagues or a walk. But you're going to have a walking meeting with someone so that you get out and have a fresh perspective. Those times you can get away from the desk might give you some R&R that you need that helps stave off that burnout.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, those were some prevention techniques, but what about those of you who might already be in burnout stage, right? You might feel like getting out, you wish you had prevented them, but you didn't. Or, for whatever reason, you're in that state. Let's talk about some ideas to get you out of it. One thing is to briefly maybe inventory your top 3 stressors and your top 3 supports at work. So what are the issues, the activity, the people maybe who are causing you the biggest stress, and what can you do about it? And then also thinking about your 3 biggest support systems you have. Maybe that's your team, maybe that's your boss, maybe it's a coach or somebody that um, can help you through those stressful moments and think about, am I using those supports? I know even just thinking about delegating work sometimes I feel like delegation is one of my greatest skills, but sometimes I'll get myself into a rut where I'm like so busy I feel like I don't have time to delegate, right? Or I I need to take time to train someone or get out of that. So, how can we mesh those support systems with our stressors? So,
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Ask for help, as we talked about, permanently or temporarily, trusting in the psychological safety of the organization you're at. If you're feeling burnout, going to your boss and saying, I really feel like I'm at a burnout stage and I don't want to be. I care too much about this organization. I care too much about you. I care too much about my clients, but I'm over capacity. Saying the words out loud.
yeah, yeah. And consider finding a mentor or a coach. And maybe that person is inside or maybe it's outside of your own organization. But take time to take care of yourself or to get some ideas from those people on what you can do.
When you feel like you can't afford to take any break or take any time, that should be a warning signal to you that I need to take a break and take some time off. And that is
Yeah.
just stepping up and walking away and locking the door behind you and doing something for yourself. And I know that sounds really, really hard, but it's
Yeah.
you've got to. I'm going to say, I want my voice in your ear. Get up, walk away from that desk, lock the door. It'll still be there tomorrow, and tomorrow it'll be tomorrow's issue.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear that so often that people
Uh-huh.
say, and I have been one of those myself, like, I don't have time to take a break. I don't have
Yes.
time to take a day off or
Uh-huh.
whatever. But when you do, it
Uh-huh.
works, right? You think it doesn't work, but
It does work.
when we're so caught up and working so much, we're just not effective
Right, you're not
anymore.
thinking as clearly. You'll come back with a hopefully better brain.
Yeah. Yeah. And, this idea might not be a possibility for many people, but if it is, consider changing seats, right? Can you
Mm,
rotate a position within the HR team for a period of time, maybe spending time in recruiting or training or employee relations that might help give you a new focus on some of the issues that are happening in the organization or learning a new skill set, which might empower you more in other aspects as well too. So
that's great. And then remind yourself what it is that you enjoy about your role. It doesn't hurt to do a quick when we talk about, the three supports you have at work, what attracted you to your role? What are the things you really love? And you know what? Sometimes it's reminding yourself, big picture, why I want to be doing what I'm doing. Now, if you're
yeah,
so burnt out that you can't think of anything anymore, maybe it's time to make that change. But I'm going to guess that you're going to at the core love that job. It's just that we've got to fix some things around it.
right. I think too that if you go to get help from a boss or a business partner or whoever that might be, try to use some data when speaking to other leaders about, right? It's one thing to go to someone and say, I'm burnt out, I'm exhausted, I'm not being effective right now. I mean, those things might all be true and need to be shared too, but maybe trying to put it into some numbers of, I worked 60 hours for the past 3 weeks, or I think if we could get some temporary help in here for 25 hours a week
Mhm.
for the next 3 to 4 weeks that we can get through this, right? So trying to use some solid data or some formulas or some estimates from prior years or whatever to get a feel for, to give them a feel for what is it you're asking for? How much
Mhm.
help, how much money is this going to cost to get you feeling better and caught up on some things. So, and thinking too along those lines about what is the right size for your HR team. We learned just in our previous podcast about that, we had said for years that you should have one HR person for about 100 employees. And now that is, in some SHRM surveys telling us that number is closer to 2 now. So, using some of that data to say we need to hire more people, or here's what we've taken on in the past 6 months. Some of those things too. So,
I love that point because I think most managers, if you come to them and say, I'm just so burnt out, I don't know where to go, they're as lost as you are. So if you can
yeah,
come in there with say, here's some ideas that I think would help us, help me, help the organization, that's a beautiful thing. You may be so burnt out, you can't see the path forward. I get that.
yeah,
But if you have some ideas, sharing them, I think is going to be appreciated by your leadership.
yeah. Maybe investing in manager training could be another option as well, which could alleviate issues and conflicts that are coming to you, that maybe could be better dealt with by the manager. Maybe on them giving better feedback, setting better expectations, handling conflicts, lots of different leadership skills that they might be passing the buck to HR, to that increases your workload when
Mhm.
they really could be taking some of those on. But we got to understand that burnout is not a personal failure. It's a signal. You mentioned that earlier, Susan, that it's a signal that we need to listen, act, and protect our own well-being or those of our HR team members. And if today's episode helped with that, share it with an HR friend who needs it.
Very fair. Jody, what's one small step people can do in this area, do you think, to create more joy at work?
Well, I've talked about this many times on the podcast, but I think understanding our strengths, right? What is it that we do well? And you mentioned the step about reminding yourself, why am I in this role? Where do I
Mm,
find joy in this role? And what do I do best? And any time that we can focus more on what we do best, we're more productive. We get more done. We find more joy in what it is we're doing. So understanding who you are and what you're best at, and then advocating for yourself in those areas as well too.
yeah, very fair.
Yeah.
Jody, we have a listener question. The following question came from one of our listeners to a prior episode. How do you create a balance with personal relationships in the workplace and keep yourself HR professional?
Yeah. So I thought this really did come from one of our listeners, but I've had a couple of conversations in the past month with people about this. One in particular, I've heard people say for years that as HR professionals, that they not connect with other employees on social media because maybe sometimes we learn too much about people that we don't want to know. So I'm not necessarily advocating for that. I'm just saying some people have a rule. I know lots of HR people who have a rule about that. I also was talking to a friend who leads HR for an organization, and she was telling me that she was hiring someone new in HR and told them that one of the expectations was that they not have any kind of personal relationship with employees of the organization. And I mean, they wanted them to be a good client service provider and have a positive professional relationship, but no personal relationship. And she'd actually interviewed someone for the role that she was very interested in hiring. And then she told them this rule. And the person said, I love everything else about this role, but that doesn't work for me. She said, I'll be moving to the area. And I anticipated that I would be making friends at work to, start.
Socialize with. Yeah.
Yeah. And which I think is very reasonable. But this HR leader felt very strongly she had been burned a couple of
Oh,
times.
I was gonna say, I bet there's a history on that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And I just thought that was very interesting. So again,
Hmm.
not I'm not advocating for that one personally,
Mhm.
but I do think that we have to define clear boundaries sometimes. So that I think it's okay to build authentic relationships, but set professional limits, right?
Mhm.
To be transparent about our roles and our responsibilities so that colleagues understand when you're speaking as a friend versus as an HR professional. I think we also have to be consistent and fair, right? To treat all employees equally and consistently in applying policies. And if a situation happens that involves someone you're friends with or close to, maybe consider stepping away from it or seeking a second opinion to avoid a bias that people
Smart.
might think we did something differently because we were their friend. And, kind of going along with what I said earlier about being transparent, we may just need to specifically communicate that we value relationships, but that at work, sometimes as HR professionals, we need to be neutral
Mm.
on issues and maybe even saying something like, I care about you as a colleague, but I also need to ensure fairness and compliance. And of course, confidentiality is just a non negotiable, right? We,
Right.
should never be sharing sensitive information with others. And using empathy, sometimes we might need to say, I understand this is hard or difficult or might not meet your needs, but here's what the policy allows us to do here. And then I think, it's always been important for me to have an HR network and HR mentors so that we can discuss challenges with other HR professionals, maybe who are inside or outside the organization, because we can feel isolated at times. But I don't think it's that we can't have friends either. So,
Mhm.
yeah. Any different thoughts on that, Susan?
I like everything that you said. I do believe that HR people are under such scrutiny from management and employees about our objectivity. And if you are known to be a relative of someone in the organization or a good friend, or that's who you have lunch with, you've got to be even more super careful than you would ever be about anything you talk about. I mean, really, if somebody finds out where the company picnic's going to be, and then they happen to be a friend of yours and they start talking about it, it hurts. It hurts your credibility. So I think all of your advice is really, really good, but you've got to be even more diligent than you would be or vigilant than you would be if it's somebody that you're friends with in the organization
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
confidentiality. Yeah.
Agree. Agree. So now it's time for In the News. Released on December 1st, 2025, Resume Now's AI trends for 2026. And I suspect we talked a lot about AI in 2025, and we're going to be talking a lot more about it
Yes.
in 2026. But this particular report brings together 8 studies conducted in 2025 amongst thousands of US workers and employers, revealing how AI has evolved from a buzzword to a staple in the workforce. And some of the things they found: 97% of workers have asked ChatGPT for advice instead of their manager.
Whoa.
That is crazy. 97% of anything, right,
That's
is
very
crazy.
scary.
Yeah,
91% of employers report using AI to hire, and 73% say time to hire has improved since implementing AI. I have to believe that they're using AI in part of their employment process.
yeah,
Certainly, applicant tracking systems, HRIS systems that have AI built in, that doesn't surprise me. I'm not sure. I'm sure they're not using AI to make the hiring decision, but as a
yeah,
component of their process for sure.
right, right, and that's only natural too,
Mhm.
right? Yeah. 84% believe AI makes it easier to find a job, and 68% of workers have used AI to write resumes. And, I think people get nervous when they hear there's so much AI in the hiring process. But I think this is an important statement too. It may make it easier for
Mhm.
recruiters, but it's also making it easier for the job seeker too. So,
Yeah, and it can be technology for good. It's helping
right.
narrow and laser focus the right candidate for the right jobs. It couldn't be very much technology for good.
Yeah.
I don't. It doesn't surprise me that 68% are using AI as part of their resume building. But you know
Yeah.
what? That's why it's more vigilant or important for the hiring manager to really authenticate people's work experience and through really good behavioral interviews and reference checking. And
Yeah.
finally, 1 in 3 or 34% of workers say that they would prefer to report to an AI manager. That makes me laugh.
I think that one is hilarious. So,
Mhm.
yeah, we still need people, folks. But the data does highlight how AI is transforming job hunting, leadership, pay, and trust at work, showing a workforce learning to balance optimism and anxiety as automation reshapes how people find jobs, manage teams, and define value. So,
Yeah.
yeah. I like your comment though, Susan. Think of it as using it for good, right? It can be
Yes.
good for everyone if used correctly and properly and ethically. So,
Yes.
yeah. If you're SHRM certified, you can get credit for listening to this episode. To get the code, go to getjoypowered.com/SHRM and fill out a short evaluation. When you finish the evaluation, you'll get the code and a link to a proof of participation certificate. The code will expire on February 23rd, 2027. Again, that's getjoypowered.com/SHRM to get the code, which will expire on February 23rd, 2027. Thank you for listening and thank you for your dedication to the HR profession. Tune in next time, and as always, make it a joy powered day.
Thank you. If you like the show, please tell a few friends about us and let us know what you thought by leaving us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening right now. Become a Joy Powered member to get extras like early access to episodes, video versions of the episodes, bonus episodes, and even more. Learn more at patreon.com/joypowered. You spell Patreon, Patreon. So it's patreon.com/joypowered. You can find more information on our podcast, books, blogs, and more at getjoypowered.com. We're at JoyPowered on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And you can email us via joypowered@gmail.com. Make it a joy-powered day.